And I learn things, I write them down, and then I compile my stories out of a selection of things I've learned. So that I try to structure the story so I can include these things. Like you were looking at the page with the fireflies. Yeah, well, that's a thought I was having. You know, that other people's light can help us. We don't need to be resentful of other people who are doing well. Mm-hmm. Their good fortune may help us. You know. And that was a thought I was having, and then I thought, well, where can I put that in the book? You know, how can I get that into the story? I don't want it shoehorned into this, you know, but I want it to feel natural, and so yeah, that's what I do.
The relationship of Amalia and the wolf is so loving. And how do you think that the relationship is evolving throughout the story, and maybe what message these two characters want to share about support and connection?
I think one thing I mentioned earlier is that they're extremely unlikely friends. Mm-hmm. You know, they should be dinner. One should have eaten the other one. And that's, you know, I think that's important. I don't think we need to hang around with people our own age or our own gender or whatever. I think we can connect if we're a little bit open. We can connect with anybody, and I think that's an important thing, because the more friends and so on we have, I think the better. I think it's wonderful. I think their relationship changes in the book because the wolf is the dog is very naive and playful and wants to be friends, but the wolf is grumpy and surly and jaded and has no time for the dog. You know, it's but over the course of the book, the wolf softens and softens more, and I don't know if I put any significance into that. I just think it makes a nice story. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to make creative.
It's just that simple. Yeah.
Okay. What's next for you as a writer and illustrator? Are you creating something?
Yeah, I'm writing a book at the moment. I'm about halfway through, which is sort of similar to the very first book I wrote, The Big Panda and Tiny Dragon. Mm-hmm. The idea is that each page is a standalone page, so you can open it a page a day or on any random page. Some of the pages I've made into double page spreads, so it's half the story here and half on this side, to, you know, just to make things interesting for myself and to give myself new artistic challenges. And you know, I can tell if it's just a single panel, there's only so much you can discuss, whereas a double page you can discuss a little bit more. And there is a sort of thread linking the pictures, so it's not exactly a story, but there's a theme that runs through the book. That would be, I think, published about this time next year. I have an idea for a novel as well, which would be a Big Panda and Tiny Dragon novel, which would be very...
Amazing news.
Yeah, I don't know how it would go down, because it's a novel where the protagonists are animals, and that's talking animals, which is a bit weird, but... well, I was at the art university yesterday, and they were saying, like, they were asking for advice, and I said, I don't really give advice, but one thing I do, I try to write what I want to write, not what I think will sell, not what I think other people will like, but what's important to me and what I think's fun. And I don't know, I think a novel about a talking panda and a tiny dragon, it sounds quite fun, and so I'm looking forward to doing that. And I'd like to do some more of my own art, some more painting. I haven't done much sort of painting and things for a couple of years, so I'd like to get back into that. That's the main thing.
Do people share with you that they want to take the pictures and make it in posters.
Yeah.
Like the really drawings that you could see in a museum. Like you put a lot of time. I'm not a drawer,
Yeah.
but it seems that in some of your drawings you have given yourself, like creating not just the page of a book, but the painting.
Yeah, I do try to put a huge amount of effort into the pictures. I try to make them reinforce the text. So if the text is sad, I try to use certain colour palettes and techniques to try and make the picture echo the sadness or whatever. So I spend a lot of time drawing the pictures, try and get them just right. And people do frame them and put them up in their offices or workplaces, or I've had them. They get put up in some hospitals, quite a lot of schools, and in places where they do therapy. Sometimes in therapist offices and things like that. That's great. I think that's wonderful.
Great. These were my questions. I want to open the floor for any questions from the audience. Yes.
Okay, sure. First of all, thank you very much for your work. First of all, thank you so much for your work. I think you have touched many people, and they are very appreciative of your effort. I'm wondering whether you've drawn inspiration from Jonathan Livingstone Seagull or other works that combine spirituality with animals as a medium to speak. Obviously, you're in Greece, where Aesop had fables with animals. But besides that, what are your, let's say, more contemporary inspiration, or is it your path in Buddhism or spirituality, and your work in drawing that made you create what you've created? So what is the mix that have created your work,
Yeah.
in essence?
I've not actually read Jonathan Livingstone Seagull, so it's probably unlikely. Yeah. I do like modern spiritual fables. Like say like Paulo Coelho, you know him, or there's a guy called Robin Sharma, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. He wrote a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and
published by Dioptra.
Yeah.
We're glad we keep on inspiring.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
so far.
and it's a
I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
interesting.
I like it. It's an interesting book. I think I like the combination of a story where the sort of lessons are buried into the text.
Yeah.
Like you say, the Aesop's fables. I think there's something nice about that. I'm sure there are others I've read. I can't bring them to mind. But I mean, of course, I've been inspired by lots of work. I do read a lot of comics and graphic novels, and I think you could probably say my books are in a way graphic novels. They're a picture and text, which is the classic format of those books, and I really like them. I think that the pictures help to slow down the reader and to give more atmosphere to the text, I think. So I think they complement each other well, and so...
I have a second question, if I may.
Yeah.
Success sometimes can be a big burden.
Mm.
This was a phenomenal success in the last couple of years. I know I've seen an interview of yours that says that nothing has changed much in your life. You live in the same place, you have your cats, and so on and so forth. But how do you experience this change? Because fame and interest and adoration are very powerful instances of emotion and life. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you manage this?
I think I have quite significant imposter syndrome, you know, which keeps me very grounded. So I'm still surprised that people like the work, and I'm not really famous, not in the traditional sense. I mean, lots of people read my books, but nobody recognises me ever, you know. So I think in the last 4 years, I think one person has walked up to me, and that was in a bookshop. No, I'm not famous in the traditional sense. You know, it's nice I don't have to worry about bills. That was because I had very little money before, and I had a lot of animals, and I was always terrified of vet bills because they could wipe you out in a week, and that was very worrying in a way. But no, I had a very small house. I used to have to I wrote my first 2 books on the dining table because the house was so small. So I bought a bigger house, and that's about it. I still do pretty much all the same things, except I do get to come to things like this, which I never did. So I have got to travel a little bit and meet all sorts of interesting people. So yeah, I kind of feel I've remained quite fairly grounded overall. I think maybe that's just luck because I haven't made any particular effort to. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So
Hello.
grateful of hearing you today.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. First question, what comes first, the drawing or the words, or does it come simultaneously? And second question, would you consider in the future including a human among the animals in the story? Like a human together with the animals?
Okay. So the first question, I always do the text first. I write the text all year. So when I was in the car coming up here, I had an idea for a picture or a scene. So I write it down, and then I would when I've got an idea for a book, for a story, I go through all the ideas that I've come up with, which is quite a lot, and I take out all the ideas that will work within that story, and then I compile them all into an approximate story. I would send that to my editor, and he would say, yeah, he likes it or he doesn't like it. He's always liked it so far, fortunately. And then I would refine that story slightly, and then I would, when I've got a rough outline for the story, the first few, I would take a few pages and I would get that text as good as I can get it, and then I would start to draw pictures to go with that text. And while I'm drawing the pictures, I would refine the text and make it better. Yeah. So it's always the text in the short answer. And what's your second question again, sorry?
About considering in the future including a human figure
humans.
together with the animals.
Yeah. Probably not. No.
They're intolerable.
Yeah. Have you met humans? Yeah. No, I'm joking, of course. But in the cat book that I did, the Cat Talks Zen, there's a brief appearance of a human because the cat book is based on Zen stories, and it was necessary to illustrate one of the stories. But I think that. Like, if I write a book about 2 old men that live in a shed, say, that's much harder for a little girl to relate to. Whereas, like, a panda bear, none of us are panda bears, but that's a good thing because we can maybe project our own emotions onto the panda bear better than we can onto an old man or a little girl or so I think the animals add a neutrality to things, which maybe helps us to empathise with them more, perhaps. And yeah, exactly. Yeah.
thank you for your books and for being here.
Oh, thank you.
I love your writing.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And I use it, like you said, because I'm a therapist. I've used excerpts from your
Oh,
work.
wow. Oh, that's amazing.
What I wanted to ask is your opinion on why it is a good idea, I imagine you think it is a good idea for adults to read books that are, well, they're not picture books obviously, but they're not novels. They have wonderful pictures, very wise messages, but they're in a different format. So,
Yeah.
what is your opinion on that?
I think the main reason I did it in that format is because I know if you've tried to read books on Buddhist philosophy, but they can be a bit heavy and unapproachable, and also a lot of people will be scared off just by the concept of it. They think, oh, religion, I want anything to do with that. Oh, whatever. Whereas these things, spirituality, all different kinds of spiritualities and religions, they contain such wonderful, important messages, and they're ancient, so they've been sort of around for a long time, that they're really, really good. But we're very unlikely to actually take the time to read these heavy, dusty books and extract the good bits. So my idea was to sort of take out these little good bits and make them more digestible to a modern audience. And in a way, you might think it's a bit of a shame to take some great ancient text and turn it into a snapshot. But if it gets people into different ways of thinking and gets them to think differently about their life situations and their problems, I think it's worthwhile. And then once they've read these things and looked at them, they may feel encouraged to go back and look at the original texts as well, perhaps. So that's why I think it's important.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
First of all, thanks for your touching script. I have a question. What was the age who start to face the challenges in your life and to start writing these beautiful stories that touch our existence?
Okay. I think I've faced the challenges for a long time, probably since I was a teenager. I've always had this really hyperactive mind, and it would just go on and on and on, playing out bad scenarios, like playing bad films in my head all the time. I don't think that's rare. I think a lot of people do it, and it runs away with worst case scenarios all the time, inventing horrible situations that won't happen. I've had it for years and years and years and years. It drives you bonkers. It's very frustrating. But I just lived with it. I just never had. I just used to slap myself to get myself out of the train of thought, which is quite effective actually. Or splash water in your face or something. But I think when I was, I don't know, maybe in my 30s probably, I found a book on Buddhism in a bookshop. And I read this book. It's called The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. It's a very simple book. It's not really a religious book. It's just a nice simple guide to different ways to look at your life. And it's not a cure-all, but it's like, oh, there are new options for me. And it might alleviate the suffering just a little bit. But once you've seen the suffering weaken, you see the potential that you can fix yourself and you can do things to make your life better. So then you go and get another book and you read that. If you're lucky, maybe you can find a teacher or a group or something. But books are a great place to start, and you can read more books, you can find out more information, you can start practices. And I didn't, and I slowly got better and better. I kept researching more things, practicing more things. I joined some meditation groups. And after, I guess, when I was about in my early 40s, I guess, I decided to draw I thought I've collected up so much knowledge and it's so useful and it's helped so much that I really need to share it. And I wanted to start a little group. I was a bit shy, so I didn't start the group. And then COVID occurred, so I couldn't start the group anyway. So I decided to draw the pictures instead. And so that's how it happened.
Thank you very much. Personally, I find these groups in your books, and this is very powerful for everyone.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Any sound kids? Yeah, why not? Drawing is a big part of your life. How did you decide to display drawing through a tattoo?
Oh, why did I? This tattoo.
Yes.
That's a strange story.
We love stories.
Okay.
Your stories are really good here.
I when I was little, I wanted to be a park ranger, so I studied. I wanted to protect the animals. That was my dream. So I was advised to do zoology at university. So I did all the things I needed to do. I did 5 years of study, and when I finished, they told me I had the wrong degree. So I couldn't be a park ranger. It was very disappointing. So I thought, okay, I'll go back to being an artist. You know, that I'd done a lot of art when I was a child, so I thought I'll be an artist and a writer. I like those two things. And so I got, at the time in the UK, if you have this tattooed hands, you can't get a job. You know, people don't want to employ you if you've got tattooed hands. So I tattooed my hands so I could never get a job.
So you burn your ships?
Yeah, I burned my ship, exactly that.
Exactly.
That's, yeah. So, I cut off all my options.
But limiting your options makes each choice so much more meaningful.
Exactly, yeah. So then I had to push really hard to be an artist, and a writer.
And what about companionship? Because one thing I've seen in your books is this aspect of having companions in your life, fellow travelers, escorts, or partners.
Yeah.
How is this in your life? This is a personal question, you don't have to answer, but how do you experience this? Because sometimes art is a way to project our desires of having a world that we would love to live in.
Yeah.
So, what is this for you, and what advice would you give on that?
I have a wife. I'm very lucky. She's lovely. She's a bit of a dream, to be honest. She's the kindest person I know. So I'm very, very lucky. So I have companionship. But when I worked, I volunteered at Samaritans for a long time, which is like a helpline for people who are very depressed or anxious or suicidal. And I spoke to a lot of people who had nobody, absolutely no one. So it occurred to me, what do you tell? How do you talk about friendship to people who have nobody? It's a very difficult thing to do. And you say, "Oh, friendship's wonderful. You know, people are the best," and they go, "Well, I have no one. What should I do?" And I get the only thing I could think of for that is that basically we can be our own friends, and we can treat ourselves like we were our friends, which we're not very good at. We're actually generally quite brutal to ourselves, and we have unrealistic expectations, and we have these voices we don't even have control of telling us we're unworthy, or all sorts of unpleasant traits. But you can watch those voices. You don't have to tell them off. You don't shout at them. You just watch them. And as you watch them, you go, "Oh, there he is again, doing this thing." And he just slowly, that causes that voice to break down slowly over time. And you can you can start to befriend that voice, and then the nasty voice in your head becomes your own little friend, which is, I don't know if that maybe doesn't work for everybody, but I think it's, if we have friends, that's great. But if we don't have friends, I think that's the next best thing we can do, is befriend ourselves.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Anyone else? Κανείς άλλος?
Να πούμε μια τελευταία ερώτηση από τη Δεσποινίδα Λίνα εδώ.
Φυσικά.
She wants to ask the final question.
Of course, yeah.
You want to ask it in English? No. What was your first book?
Oh, okay.
And how came the idea to write it?
Okay, my first book is when I was 7. When I was roughly 7. I can't remember exactly, but I used to collect things called Mr. Man books, and I think you have them in Greece. You call them something else.
Yeah.
There's like Mr. Strong and Mr. Happy. And
Ναι, αυτό.
yeah, and they brought out little Miss books as well for the female characters, and I loved these, and I had a collection of them, and I invented my own character, and I won't tell you what he was called because it's. But he was lovely, and yeah, I drew all the pages on like photocopier paper, and I folded them all over and stapled them together, and I had my own little Mr. Man book, and that was the first ever book I wrote. And there was the second part.
What inspired you? You said it inspired.
Oh for the Mr. Man books. So yeah.
And you like a lot of the dragons. You like dragons.
I do love
You know,
dragons.
that's
Yes, yeah, dragons are great.
Very cool.
Little tiny ones and big ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Μικρός
So-
Okay.
Maybe there's another question.
Oh, okay.
May I have the last question myself?
Oh, okay.
We met before, right? Okay. I have this question. Your books are sold all over the world as books that adults buy, right?
Mhm.
In Greece, you have this phenomenon that only 30% of the sales of your books goes to adults and 70% goes to kids. And we're fighting as a publishing company to get the books to the adult section as well. But everybody tells us that no, they should stay here because this is where they sell. And thankfully, we sell a lot of copies. So how do you explain this? About Greece and the rest of the world?
Well, I don't actually know the figures for the rest of the world. I was in Croatia last week, and they're also. I visited schools. Croatia also sell them to children. I do know that. I know in the UK they're not marketed as children's books, but I get a lot of emails from parents who say that they do read them with their children. Sometimes the children don't necessarily understand everything involved, so the parents talk through the stories with their children and explain them. And I do get letters from children, beautiful letters, they're really lovely, from children saying how they like them. I don't quite, I'm not really very clued up on why. I mean, I wrote them for adults. I never thought they would translate to children. But I think the only thing I can think is that because they've been translated into so many languages, like I think 35 languages now, including countries with massively different cultures to our own, that our souls are all the same, basically. That's children, adults, Egyptians, Africans, and Chinese. Our souls are all built the same. We want to have less suffering and more happiness, and our souls speak a common language, I think, and I think that's why they work for children and adults, and whatever. That's all I can guess.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So maybe do adults in Greece want more suffering? Okay, so not any other questions, right?
Εγώ θα πω εδώ αυτό. Ας ξεκινήσουμε λοιπόν υπολείκως, γιατί το φεγγάρι δεν θα μας περιμένει. Όμως, μπορεί μια προτροπή να... Let's start.
Thank you for coming.
Να υπενθυμίσω υπάρχουν αντίτυπα εδώ δεξιά στο ταμείο όσοι χρειάζεστε. Και όσοι δεν
Oh, okay, yeah, lovely talking. Yeah, and you as well, thank you.
And I want a signature. Συγγνώμη, Μανώλη.
He goes first, he goes first.
How do you spell your name?
Angel.
A-N-G-E-L. Yeah, okay. That's appropriate.
And then you add OS, Angelos.
Angelos, yeah, the full name.